Look, I know what you're going through. I know what you're feeling because I've been there. I've been in that place. I've been at the bottom where you feel like you're at your lowest. Everything reminds you of that person. You can't get that person out of your mind. You know, I think about my breakup. I was in a relationship for 7 years, and when her and I broke up, I was so depressed. I thought I thought I'd be good. While we were in the relationship, girls used to hit on me all the time. So I'm like, this ain't nothing. I replace her in a second. But I guess I didn't understand how attached I was to her, or how, I guess, in love I was with her. I didn't really understand that until we broke up and time passed by. I was like, man, I miss her. I got used to companionship, just chilling, watching TV with each other. We had our favorite shows that we watched together. We ate food together. We did everything together. We went to the movies together. I never did anything alone because she was always down for whatever. So when that's taken, when that no longer exists, it feels like a piece of you is missing. Like literally a piece of you is missing. Like I gave her my couch and like my huge sofa, and the one that you actually see behind me, that it's a I worked for Ashley Furniture at the time, and I bought another one because I love that couch. I wasn't going to let her get off of my couch. But I gave her my couch and I didn't even replace it for like, I would say like 6 months. 6 months, I had my living room was empty. Not this place, but at a different place. My living room was empty. I had nothing in there because I felt like if I had bought a couch, that meant I was moving on. And I wanted to leave the space there just in case we got back together and she had to bring the couch back in. So that tells you where my mind state was, how I was feeling, what I was going through. Your boy was crying, sobbing like a baby. My brother was killed when I was 18. And I honestly think I cried more from my relationship than I did from my brother. Though my brother was a long time ago, so I don't really remember the day after day of crying. So but it just tells you like breakups can sometimes feel like deaths. But it's even worse because you can come to grips with the understanding that the person that died, you're never going to see them again. But the person that you break up with, depending on how long y'all been together, like me and her were together for 7 years. So it's a little different. It's a long term relationship. I'm looking at her as like my wife or somebody that I'm going to spend my future with. So how I feel may be a little bit more intense than what you feel right now. Maybe right now you're just, going through it a little bit, but it may not be that serious. And in that case, I would say give it time. Just give it time. Time heals. Time heals. With time, you'll eventually get over her slowly but surely, or you'll eventually get over him slowly but surely, to where that person, you don't even think about that person like that anymore. You may still look at them to keep tabs. Oh, what are they up to? And whatnot. But you'll no longer have that emotional connection. You won't be as affected by the things that they do. So back to my experience, it was similar to death, but almost it felt like it was worse because the person was still alive. The person was moving on. The person is experiencing a new partner, all that, and you have to experience that. You have to sit and watch that, from over the fence. You're getting a peek into somebody else's life that was supposed to be your life, and no longer, you see them doing things that you guys talked about doing. That's when it really starts to, I see what you're doing. It starts to really mess with you. But After that period, for me, it lasted maybe, I would say I was like depressed for probably like 2 months, something like that for a minute. And then I jumped in a rebound relationship, which I hope none of you guys do, because it isn't fair to yourself and it isn't fair to the person that you're rebounding with, because you're jumping into something without them knowing how you're feeling. You're feeling a different way, but you're not necessarily expressing that to them. So they're thinking that you guys are on one page when you're really stuck on somebody in the past. So we have to stop ourselves from monkey branching or jumping into rebound relationships, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy. I know I jumped into one, and almost the whole time I was in it, I was thinking about my ex. I was hanging out with old girl, having fun times with her, but a lot of the time I was thinking about my ex. Not healthy. Not healthy. And I think she knew. Like one time, I tell y'all, one time I cried at her place, and like she didn't even trip or anything. She just consoled me. Like she just gave me a hug. She didn't ask me what was wrong. She didn't ask me why I was crying. She just consoled me, you know? But through that time, that breakup, I found purpose, because I didn't sit around and waste that time, of being alone. I got into the rebound relationship, and then I broke that up because I one day came to the realization that I was in a rebound relationship. I was like, yo, I gotta end this. I gotta focus on myself. I gotta get better. I gotta get healthy so I could be the best version for the next person that comes around. So in that time, I worked on myself. I started to read a lot more about emotional intelligence, because my emotional intelligence was low. In my relationship, I focused on myself. I didn't focus on my partner that much or her needs. So I took accountability for the things that I did and wanted to fix my issues, so that I would be better for my next partner. And that's how you have to attack this time of alone or isolation. You have to look at it in a sense of, how can I get better than I was before? How can I be a better version than I was before? A lot of people, when they break up, they tend to focus on what the other person did. Oh, they did XYZ and I couldn't take it no more. But I'm always like, what were you responsible for? I always ask women that dating or talking to. I always ask them, yo, what happened to your last relationship? And what do you take accountability for? And you'd be surprised how many of them don't ever really take accountability for anything. Like, it's always the other person. And that's a bad way to be, because how are you ever progressing if you don't ever acknowledge the things that you do wrong or the things that you need to work on? So in that time to myself, I spent most of it just focusing on how to be better. How can I be a better man? How can I show my partner that I care about her, and that I want to understand her so that she can feel the most amount of joy when she's with me? How can I do that? So I started to read the books. I started to understand attachment styles, understanding my attachment style, because you have to know self. You have to understand yourself and understand the root causes as to why you act a particular way. So I had to get down to my root cause, and I started to connect things back to the death of my brother. I never fully healed from my brother getting killed. I kind of suppressed my feelings because I felt like I had to be tough. If I felt like I was good, or I showed that I was good, I wasn't overly emotional, then other people would be okay. My parents would be okay if they didn't see me cry. So I didn't allow myself to express my emotions. I didn't allow myself to grieve. And because of that, that energy turned into something else. The energy doesn't go away. Energy can't be created nor destroyed. That's physics. But it can transmute. It can turn into something else. And so that energy turned into anger. I would be angry all the time. I stopped caring about a lot of stuff. If people were wanting to fight, I was down. I was with it. So I had to get myself out of that mentality. I had to heal myself and grieve properly and come to an understanding that I can't continue to be like this. I can't continue to exert this type of behavior or these type of emotions. So I started to work on that. I got closer to God. I started to read the Bible more. And because I was reading the word, I started to become more like Christ. That's the funny thing about reading the Bible is that the more you read it, the more you start to take on Christ's personality or characteristics, loving, caring, patient. And I started to see that in me, that I just I had more of a joy in life, because the way I operated in the world was now coming from a place of love instead of a place of anger. And so I did the work. I improved myself. I improved my emotional intelligence. I also understood myself more, and understanding the type of woman that I want, because she had her flaws as well. There's some things that she did I wasn't no longer going to accept from my partner. So that requires a little bit of understanding thyself, because I now know what I will accept and won't accept from a partner. So it helps me in my filtering process when I meet different women. Like, she's showing signs of this, that's a no-go. You know, if you don't understand what you want in a partner, you're going to continue to pick the wrong ones. These girls that I've talked to, at least, that tell me, "Oh, I keep falling for this guy and it doesn't work out." And I always ask them, what is the common denominator? You're the common denominator. And you're getting in these unsuccessful relationships because you keep picking the same type of men. You need to understand what's attracting you to these particular type of people in order to fix that problem, in order to fix better people. Not fix better people, in order to find better people that are more in line with the type of person that you want to be with. So it's all about doing the work on yourself. It's all about self improvement. You have to use that time of being single to better yourself. But too many people don't use that time wisely. They mess around during that time. They sit around, they mope, they waste time, they blame other people, they blame the world instead of like focusing on what they attributed to the broken relationship. What do you take accountability for? That's the word of the day, accountability. Understand where you went wrong and try to work on doing things differently to fix those issues so you don't continue to repeat. And because that's the thing. If you don't work on these behaviors, if you don't work on the things that you're not doing so well, then you're going to continue to repeat those behaviors because you're going to do it out of habit. So we have to break those habits. We have to break those chains. Those chains, those chains are those bad habits are keeping you in bondage. So we have to figure out how to break those chains in order to become a better version of ourselves. So I've been there. I know what you're going through. I know what it feels like to be going through a breakup. Everything reminds you of them. Every song, every movie, food, restaurants, you name it. The ocean. Me and my ex used to go to Siesta Key all the time. I live on the Gulf, so I'm a Tampa boy. But we used to go to Siesta Key all the time down in Sarasota. So now that beach does nothing but remind me of her. So everything is going to remind you of that particular person, but you can't allow it to trigger you. Eventually with time, you'll get to a place where, hey, you may think of that person, but it doesn't trigger you. It doesn't give you anxiety. It doesn't make you feel any kind of way. You may remember good memories, but they don't have a big effect on you, So give it time. And while you're allowing time to do its thing, continue to work on yourself, better yourself so you're ready for your next partner. But I thank you guys for checking out this video. I hope this helps you um get through your breakup, and always come back to this video if you forget some of these things. Allow this to remind you of the mind state that you need to be in order to move on. But I thank you guys for checking out this video. I'm gonna have more content on the way per usual. I'll catch y'all in the next one. I'm out.